Welcome back, viewers. Now, in this final segment of today's show, we're going to discuss France, and the newly appointed Prime Minister, Jean Castex, has vowed to defend the country's secularism. Now, we know, of course, French do defend secularism in the country as an ideal wholeheartedly, and that in and of itself is fine, but that seems to then clash with the many Muslims that live in the country at this point. And Castex, Prime Minister Castex, has said that he will fight quote-unquote radical Islamism in all its forms as an absolute priority. Now, that for many Muslims who have arguably suffered Islamophobia for many, many years in the country, does seem like, once again, that they're going to be targeted for many of the country's ills. Now, we know also that President Macron has also spoken about the BLM movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, in not so pretty terms when it comes to France. There are issues of racism there, too, which the French have not really admitted or even really existed at all. Let's discuss all of this a bit further. We're now joined by Jocelyne Cesari, who is a professor of religion and politics at the University of Birmingham. She's also visiting professor currently at the Harvard Divinity School. She's joining us this morning from Boston, Massachusetts. Jocelyne, good morning to you, and thank you for joining us. Is it surprising at all that the new Prime Minister of France would make such a statement? Certainly, as I said in my introduction, France has not had a good relation with its own Muslim citizens, has it, for a while?
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's not really surprising for two reasons. First is we have to keep in mind that French secularism is very specific. It is founded on a strong hostility to all religions. We are looking now at Muslims, but the history of French nation shows a great hostility toward religion, because in the French memory, religion is trouble, and you can trace this back to the war of religion. The French rulers, from the kings to the president, have absorbed the idea that the visibility of religion in public space leads to civil war and interreligious conflicts. So what we are witnessing, and I've written a lot about that, is that since the 80s, the 1980s, the Muslims have been the most visible group in French society. Not because they are specific or exceptional, but because all the other French religious groups, have learned to withdraw from the public space and to privatize as much as possible their kind of, religious identity and practices. Muslims are saying, and this is an important civic point, we are French, we are citizens, but we are also Muslims. We cannot be Muslims only in our house or in our place of worship. And this is something that the French, not only the politicians, but honestly, I have fought a lot also in French against my academic colleagues. Yeah. This is something the French have a hard time to understand. So this is one. And that's why Muslims have been on the spotlight since, the 80s, when some students and pupils went to public school with a headscarf. It explains the very discriminatory practice and legislation of France against any religious signs, okay? And it includes anybody who would look different. It happened that the Muslims, again, are the most religious group in France, because all the other French are not. That's this difference that is the most unsettling for the French.
So what does this then mean, the place that Muslim citizens have then within France? Because they are there, and, for a lot of them, of course, they want to be there, certainly. And if I'm not mistaken, they're the largest minority, the largest group of Muslims within Europe in one country, i.e. in France. But then there's always been issues, right, of the ghettoization of the Muslim community as well, and them not integrating into society well. At least those are the arguments from the other side also. Is there some legitimacy to that argument as well, where Muslims may just be ghettoizing themselves in their minds as well?
It's not as simple as that, unfortunately. The Muslims in France, of course, you have now more conversion, especially among the young people. But the Muslims in France have three specifics that is very hard for the French assimilationist model to get. First, they are, most of them, from an immigrant background. Okay, so it means that when people in France are talking about immigration, in their mind they think Muslims. And this is a big issue because Muslims then become central to immigration policy that should not be related to any religion or culture. Second, as you said, this is a country where you have the most Muslims. It happens that they are also majoritarily from the North African countries. So they are ethnically visible in the sense that if you are from North Africa, even if you are not a religious person, you're going to be targeted as a Muslim.
Yeah.
And third, they are indeed coming from a very low income or disenfranchised migration. So they had a gap, to fill in or to catch up with, to become part of middle class France. And this didn't happen. But it's not because they are Muslim. It's because there is a conjunction of these three factors. Unfortunately, in the public discourse, it becomes that you are not doing well in school, you are living in housing project, and you are not assimilated because you are Muslim. And this is a very dangerous culturalization that has political consequences, and that explain also the success of radical group outside France to mobilize some young people in France. That's the issue here.
I'll get a final from you, Jocelyne. We just have about a minute left. Do you think that there is hope on the horizon? I mean, for yourself as an academic we're having this conversation openly, right? Do you think that that French society is ready for this conversation?
I'm going to be very blunt here. No, actually, I left France 20 years ago. It was bad. And I have to say it's even worse now. The crispation, the anxiety of the French vis-à-vis Islam has grown. And so it's very hard. That's what I keep telling to my friend Muslim in America. They do not have it as bad as the French, in the sense that you get out of your house as a Muslim in France, even if you are not so observant, or you will be targeted from the moment you interact in a store to the moment you go to work. You're going to be assigned and expected to express yourself as a Muslim, and not positively. So this is very hard, really hard.
Very well, John. We'll leave it there at that, but we do sincerely appreciate your taking your time out of your busy schedule to share your thoughts with us on this important topic. That was Jocelyne Cesari, a professor of religion and politics at the University of Birmingham and visiting professor at Harvard Divinity School, joining us this morning from Boston, Massachusetts. Jocelyne, they're speaking viewers about the context of France and how it views its secularism is really, really important, right? And that's fine in and of itself, but then that clashes, as she said, with the fact that you have all these North American immigrants who have come in, and they've come in generations before, some of them, of course, as Muslims into the country. They are A, ethnically very visible within French society, and B, then they choose to, wear the headscarf or otherwise, and that, again, rattles many French politicians and many just French who, again, for them, secularism is extremely important. But at the same time, they are contributing members of society. Their religion does not interfere with their ability to be contributing members of society, to be good French citizens, etc. So why then is the French government making this continually such a big issue? Why is this such a problem for French overall? Again, the largest minority of Muslims in Europe is in France. How is it that in all these years, the country has not been able to come to